Call the meeting to order with a Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome, everyone. Carolyn, can we get a roll call?
Mrs. Bennett? Here. Mrs. Eckert?
Here.
Mr. Franco and Mrs. Goebel are not here. Dr. Osherik?
Here.
Dr. Pravola?
Here.
Mr. Burke?
Here.
Mr. Farr?
Here.
Mrs. Arnold?
Here. Let the record show that we held an executive session prior to tonight's meeting for the purposes of personnel matters related to former staff. Mr. Superintendent, do you have any remarks?
Always.
I know.
Good evening, board. Good evening, Tiger community. I'm so excited for the start of the school year. I was walking through our schools today and talking with so many teachers that were setting up their classrooms. I mean, the start of the school year is really such an exciting time, and our campus is alive right now. Athletic and band practices are in full swing. You know, I'd like to thank the board. I know I did this previously, but I'd like to thank the board for approving the purchase of the new drums for the drum line. They sound and they look incredible. Our student percussionists and band directors are very, very appreciative. And personally, I wish the school year was starting tomorrow. I want to get going. This past week, my administrative team and I attended a leadership training in Gettysburg. It was absolutely outstanding. Leadership lessons were shared through the decision-making that occurred during the Battle of Gettysburg. It was wild. Our team of about 20 people, we had about 20 people with us, spent the day growing our leadership skills while walking the battlefields for about 4 or 5 hours. It was one of the best trainings I've ever gone to in my educational career. Our capital projects are moving along very well. I will always thank our facilities director, John Shapolsky, for his outstanding work. He made sure that the multitude of projects that we tackled this summer, and believe me, there was a lot. The latest one right now that's going on is the green panels are being painted outside the high school, and but it would not have happened without John's diligence. We will have a ribbon cutting, everyone. We are going to have a ribbon cutting for the new tennis courts right before the first home tennis match of the season on Wednesday, August 21st at about 3:45. And it's worth mentioning, John, I sincerely appreciate the air conditioning in the auditorium, even though we're in unoccupied mode right now, and I will go down to the gym afterwards and check that out too. All right, there it is. He said, bring your sweater next month. Even though the year hasn't started, we have a number of things on our calendar that I'd like to share. On Wednesday, August 21st, we will host orientation sessions at all 3 schools for incoming kindergarten, 3rd grade students, and 8th grade students. At 9 a.m. on the 21st, kindergarten orientation for students and parents will be held at the primary center. At 10:15, the intermediate center will host 3rd grade students and their parents, and at 11:30, incoming 8th grade students and parents are invited to the high school, and again, that's on August 21st. The first day back to school for our staff is next Thursday, August 22nd, and that day will begin for all staff right here in this auditorium, and I'll spend a few minutes welcoming everyone back and discussing our goals for the school year. And then the next day, Friday the 23rd, that's a big one. That is our first Friday football night of the year. That evening, we are hosting one of our closest neighbors, Lackawanna Trail, on the opening night of the season, and I can't wait to fill our stadium with fans from both schools, and we are preparing for a large crowd. It's going to be a very, very fun night. The first student day this year is on Monday, August 26th, and in speaking to the students that I'm seeing on campus already, you know, even though they might deny it, they're excited to be coming back to school. We will have a long weekend for Labor Day. Feedback I got for some parents last year were asking for the Friday before Labor Day off because of the fair and being involved up there. So we are. That's in our school calendar. So we'll have a long weekend for Labor Day. Our students will not have school on Friday, August 30th, or on Labor Day itself, Monday the 2nd of September. And that's a good way to start the school year. Back for 4 days and then off for a long weekend. The last event I'm going to share this evening is our free vaccination clinic. In each year since my arrival, we've hosted a free vaccination clinic for our entire community. This year's no different. It'll be held at the Intermediate Center on Saturday, September 7th, and more information will be shared with parents and the community as we get closer to that date. And we will also share information on our social media sites. Every year we've had about 150 people participate, be it students or just people from the community. We just recently received the summary of how our high school students performed on the PA State Keystone exams, and I'm going to tell you, we knocked it out of the park. On the literature exam, our students were 7 percentage points above the state average for the number of students scoring proficient and advanced. On the algebra exam, we were even better. We were 15 points above the state average. And on the biology exam, we were 15 points above the state average. You know what? This is just another example of the outstanding teaching and learning that occurs in our schools. Here's something I want everybody to know. We, Tunkhannock, is a top-tier academic school district that prepares students for success beyond the walls. We have outstanding teachers, we have outstanding students, and we have outstanding families. Students leave Tunkhannock with every tool necessary to be successful. As you can imagine, I was so filled with Tiger pride as I was reviewing those Keystone results. Finally, and on a very, very sad note, I'd like to acknowledge the tragic and unexpected passing of first grade teacher Susan Traver. Our entire school community absolutely devastated over the loss. Mrs. Traver's compassion, her work ethic, and dedication to our primary students, the only way I could describe that is just to say it was special. It was special. She was a good person. And I say that with the utmost respect. She was a good quality person that loved her family and cared greatly for her community. And Susan will most certainly be missed. As always, Madam President, thank you for the opportunity to speak to our board and the community. And I'm excited to get the year started. Go Tigers.
Thank you, Superintendent. We're going to open the floor to public comments on agenda item only. The purposes of the public comment period are for staff, residents, students, or parents of Tunkhannock students to give public comment on agenda items. We'll have 2 public comment periods tonight, one before the meeting, which is now, with the agenda items, and then one at the end for whatever else people want to talk about. Please come to the podium, state your name and your municipality, and we'll take your comment. So with that, are there any public comments on agenda items? All right, seeing none, move on to item 5, the approval of minutes. Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Bennett? Yes. Mrs. Eckert?
Yes.
Dr. O'Shea?
Yes.
Dr. Pervola?
Yes.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Mr. Farr?
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold?
Yes. Item 6, business and finance. Do we have a motion for items 1 through 6?
Motion to approve 1 through 6.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Eckert?
Yes.
Dr. O'Shea?
Yes.
Dr. Pervola?
Yes.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Mrs. Bennett? Yes. Mr. Farr?
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold?
Yes. All right, item 7, our superintendent's report, and boy, is this a big one.
I'd like to recommend a resolution be adopted approving the personnel report as presented. However, I'd like to make a correction. I made a clerical error on the personnel report. Mrs. Angie Burke is listed as being an extracurricular and co-curricular appointment, and she should be listed under volunteers. So I'm asking that the board right now just consider moving her from that first column under appointments to the volunteer column.
Any objections to that amendment?
No.
Seeing none, all right. Do we have a motion to approve the superintendent's personnel report as amended?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Dr. O'Shea?
Yes.
Dr. Pervola?
Yes.
Mr. Burke?
Abstain.
Mrs. Bennett? Yes. Mrs. Eckert?
Yes.
Mr. Farr?
Abstain.
Mrs. Arnold?
Yes.
I'd like, if I could just have a moment, I'd like to congratulate Summer Frisco, who's coming back on full-time with us, and Casey Purcell, who's going to come on full-time with us as a computer technician. Thank you very much for both being here tonight, and welcome aboard. And number 2, I'd like to recommend a resolution be adopted approving the conference attendance as follows. Kristen Glenn to the PASBO Annual Conference, $560, and Cammie Anderson to the PSBA Leadership Conference at $1,200. This is the same leadership conference that some of us will be attending, some board members and myself. Cammie is actually representing Tunkhannock Area School District at this conference. She's presenting at the conference on behalf, she's doing some substance abuse awareness in schools, and she's presenting at the conference representing us.
That's great. I'm really excited, and I hope that we continue this trend because we're doing really awesome things here at Tunkhannock that should be shared with the broader public school community in Pennsylvania. Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Dr. O'Shea?
Yes.
Dr. Pervola?
Yes.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Mrs. Bennett?
Yes.
Mrs. Eckert?
Yes.
Mr. Farr?
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold?
Yes. Committee reports. I don't believe we've had any committee meetings since our last board meeting. Do we have a need to schedule any? All right, seeing none, we'll move along. Unfinished business. We have the discussion and possible motion to approve changes or adjustments to sports programs.
As you recall, board, last month we talked about, we started the conversation out with just talking about the feasibility and sustainability of sports programs. We had mentioned, or I had mentioned that, not all that long ago, we had 1,000 more students in the district. However, we still are maintaining the same amount of sports programs with 1,000 less students, and it's becoming ever more challenging to get enough players to play. Really, we're not looking at this really as a financial issue. It's more so we don't have the personnel to really, staff all these teams. And I mean players. We don't have the students that, play it. And where we kind of left off was we were discussing, the sustainability of a couple programs. 9th grade girls basketball, 9th grade boys basketball, 9th grade baseball were 3 of the primary ones we were discussing. And we were also talking very briefly about junior high golf. However, junior high golf really doesn't cost anything. Essentially, it's $250 for a student to golf during the season, but there is no additional transportation. There is no league, and the coach, the coach that's already there oversees them. So it's a very, very minuscule amount, and it's not. That's really not making an impact. The one thing that was brought forward last year was we had a 9th grade girls basketball team that literally had 0 9th grade girls on it. It was completely, covered by 7th and 8th grade students. And the board had asked that I go back and find out in those programs how many athletes were shared. So I'm going to share this, that 9th grade baseball last year that had a roster size of 12 had pulled 4 student athletes from 7th and 8th grade. So just with 9th grade alone, they would not have had enough players to take the field. So out of 12, so there was 8 9th graders, and then there was 4 7th and 8th grade students on that team. 9th grade girls basketball, all 14 players were from 7th and 8th grade. There was no 9th grade girls basketball. There was no 9th grade female students on the 9th grade girls basketball team.
So, I'm sorry, Paul, can I interrupt? So any freshman game last year, 7th and 8th graders played those freshman games? If
That's
they played
correct.
the game, and they still had their 7th and 8th grade schedules?
That's correct.
Okay.
Right, so like if the board, if in our discussion here, the decision is made that we're not going to offer certain 9th grade sports, the 7th and 8th graders have playing opportunities, and the 9th grade athletes then would go to JV.
Right.
Like, for instance, with the girls varsity basketball program, that doesn't mean there weren't 9th grade female basketball players. It just meant they were all playing in the varsity program.
Varsity.
Yep.
And I think this was the question I had, you've answered it, and I think it's important for the community to understand that even though there's a 9th grade team, 7th and 8th graders who still have their own 7th and 8th graders play up to freshmen.
Correct. So
And freshmen in many sports, because the rosters are so low, if I'm correct on this, that the freshmen move up to the varsity. So in boys basketball, let's say, those freshmen played the JV games.
correct.
So even though junior varsity is not listed on this document that we have, the community has to understand that during a varsity game or before the varsity game, there are JV games. So my point is, I don't want to rob any kids of competition availability.
Correct.
That's the important thing.
Right.
But I think we have to also look at this to say, hey, is it reasonable to have these teams if there are other playing opportunities for the kids, competition and learning opportunities?
Yeah, I did have our athletic director, Kenny Janeski, reach out to the varsity coaches of girls basketball, boys basketball, and boys baseball to say, like, if they had some concerns, we would like them to come and speak before the board and just share their concerns. And Kenny, what were you told?
They all agreed that it was well. They would do that. Baseball was looking at it last year, when they decided to keep the freshman team. They had 48 graders up. They did boys basketball was one going, saying yes, I think that's better.
So the coaches were supportive.
Coaches are very supportive.
Now, last year in the 7th, 8th grade boys basketball, there was 28 kids. Which one's got 5 on the.
Well, that was that would be between 2 games, right, Kenny? Like with 7th and 8th grade, there's 2 games. There's a 7th grade game
7th grade game and 8th grade.
and an 8th grade team.
Okay.
So as long as our coaches, I think it's important that, at least for this board, at least for myself, that the kids have the playing and competition availability. And I'm hearing in Mr. Janeski's discussion with the coaches feel comfortable as well with this. Okay.
Is that safe to say, Kenny?
Yes, that's it.
Yeah, I mean, so like, and granted, this is not a financial discussion, right? So we're talking between those 3 freshman programs, it's a total of about $25,000. And I'm not saying that's not a lot of money, but it's certainly not gonna make a significant dent in the district's budget either way. Our problem is, will we even have the ability to field a team? Like we're getting to the point, and I wanted to bring this up because 10 years ago or 11 years ago, we won a state championship in cross country, and right now we don't have a girls cross country team, a varsity girls cross country team. We don't have enough, right? We have, how many young ladies are running, Kenny? One. 10 varsity cross country runners, right? Total? 10 or 12. And junior high cross country? 4. So like there are harder discussions coming, but I think this is the thing. When there was 1,000 more students in the district, this would never have been a discussion. Now it's just, as some sports grow, it's not like it's just that sport growing. It's growing at the expense of another sport. But
Well, we established at the last meeting that this is lacrosse's fault, so I'm sticking with that narrative.
I don't recall that, but like 9th grade boys basketball, that's the only one I didn't say. That had all 9th grade boys on it last year. There was no 7th and 8th grade students on the 9th grade boys basketball team.
I have a question. Kenny, you said there's only 4 for cross-country? For junior high. Don't we have to have 5?
To score as a team, yes. The kids could
okay.
yeah, to score as a team, you gotta have 5. But
Right.
you could run individually and compete in districts individually. You
Okay.
just can't compete as a team.
All right.
But, with those numbers, I think when we won the state title, I was, looking into it and digging into history a little bit. I think we had about 40 kids on the cross-country
Oh,
team.
yeah.
Like,
Easily.
and now it's just dwindling. And again, we just have less students. But last year, like, for instance, we, boys soccer and football shared 1 student athlete, girls soccer and cheerleading had 2 in common. Well, I said 9th grade basketball, that was all 14. But there was 1 student athlete that did baseball and track. There was 4 boys tennis players. 2 of them did track. 2 of them did volleyball. And another boys volleyball player also did track and field. So, I mean, we are sharing our student athletes in the same seasons. It's just becoming increasingly difficult. I'll say that. So, I mean, I'm not asking the board to take any action, but if we were contemplating doing something for basketball, it almost has to be now, I would say, Kenny, right? Right, because of the league schedule?
Right, we schedule, yeah. I had to notify them that you're not sponsoring freshmen.
Right, we would have to notify the league. So I am not.
I would make a motion that we do the change in the sports programs as
Yeah.
discussed.
If I may, I mean, I think that was one of the questions I had, the scheduling issue, because I know that the conference is looking at the scheduling, and I think it's more difficult if the schedule comes out and then we pull out. It is.
How many of the 7th and 8th grade boys basketball are moving up and would be in 9th grade next year? This year? These are last year's numbers, correct?
Correct. And I speculate probably about 10.
It's a lot.
We don't. We're not sure we have I mean, we would have to post this obviously, but last year we struggled to find a coach, and one of our I mean, Mr. Landon stepped up and coached, but he's not doing it this year. So right now, there's not even a freshman basketball coach. So we'll have to be posting that. And I mean, I'm assuming we would ultimately find someone, but there's no one like pressing to be the freshman coach. I would say that.
The one underlying issue, this is more of an athletics committee discussion probably, but the issue you're going to have is I've coached 7th, 8th, and 9th grade teams. And so the issue is the 9th graders historically aren't going to get any playing time except for the very best 9th graders. Because the way we run JV in Tunkhannock, which is different than, I went to a finer institution up north in Wyalusing, and that was obviously a long time ago. Like the JV was the 9th and 10th graders. In Tunkhannock, the JV is sometimes seniors, juniors, who are not getting playing time on the varsity team. And so if you get rid of the 9th grade teams, those mediocre, even sometimes above average kids are going to get zero playing time. And so, like Kenny, we did baseball together. Baseball's a different sport because we have less kids playing baseball now, but those 9th graders would have played 0 innings the entire year because they were never going to play an inning of varsity. And so I get the numbers, but we also probably need to have an athletics committee discussion about what the objective of JV is. And so, like, those kids who don't get a lot of varsity time end up starting on JV and getting all the playing time. And so then those 9th graders, nobody gets developed later on.
Yeah, if the varsity's playing JV as well,
Right.
you're pushing out the
Correct.
younger kids.
And so we kind of
So you're not growing anything
right,
there.
We kind of use these 9th grade teams as the bridge between like getting ready for JV and trying to get some playing time essentially.
And the difference between 9th grade and 11th grade, the kids can change a lot.
Yeah.
I mean,
so I
huge
don't
differences.
think we can solve that here today, but
But aren't those 3 basketball for boys and girls and baseball? They're the only teams that have a freshman team, right? Like every other athletic or every other team we have in the district is, junior high,
Correct.
yeah.
JV, varsity.
Yep. So I do think it makes sense. That's why I say it's probably more of an athletics committee
Can
discussion.
I ask Kenny, when is the schedule? I mean, is it usually October that the winter schedules have to be in?
Yes, I have varsity freshman basketball schedule, so that only mirrors.
My question is, if we, and I'm the extracurricular chairman, I'm not sure we have to have a meeting just on this topic, but I would propose, if it works out, do you think that you have to hand in the schedules for the freshman teams that we're talking about, specifically for these 2 winter sports, which is freshman girls and boys basketball, after our next board meeting? Because then maybe that's the time that we can get additional individual community feedback from what we're talking about here tonight, without having a extracurricular meeting for this topic. So do you think that if we wait to vote on this, we'll be okay with the schedule, so we won't get in hot water?
Why don't we notify the assigners that, we might not
Okay,
sponsor it, and don't belong?
okay.
Yeah.
I mean, this
But
is-
September
this-
18th is the next meeting.
The next meeting is September 18th, so
19th.
I'll believe that,
19th.
or I'd just
I have it on my
propose that we
calendar for
bring this to the board, the next meeting, get some additional community input, The bigger topic that I'm going to bring up is a extracurricular meeting in association with talking to the administration in regards to extracurricular and co-curriculars. We have to start looking at numbers of roster sizes.
Okay.
And if we don't meet roster sizes, we have to have a serious conversation about getting away from those sports.
Right.
I
Or
agree with
at
that.
least maybe partner with another school like
This is,
Elk Lake
this is,
does with.
yeah, this is a small part of that major discussion, but I
It
think
is.
we're gonna have
You're
to drill
right.
down in numbers, because that is financial.
Yep.
Don't
Yes.
forget, just a couple months ago, we voted no tax increase, and these are the kinds of things that we're gonna start talking about,
Yep.
cutting various projects or programs.
I mean, in respect to that, same thing. Like, we do that now with elective courses at the high school. Like, if they can't, put enough students into an elective course, we're not running it.
But I believe this is and I get
Yeah.
that, Paul, this is
It's the
the
same thing.
board coming out and saying, hey, we don't want to raise taxes, but in fairness to taxpayers, we got to look at tightening our belt and something. So I would just suggest that we bring this particular issue with the 9th grade teams to the next meeting for a vote.
Okay?
That would be September 19th. Does that give you, that's going to be fine, Ken, for what you got to do?
Yeah, I'll notify the deciders tomorrow.
And that's just
Okay.
for the basketball.
When is our league fees due, Kenny?
I think all of them except for these three sports, the junior high basketball and the
Okay.
so I can put that.
You mean 9th grade? You mean 9th grade, yes.
Big basketball and then
Yeah.
So could we, is there a way for us to understand the data around, kind of like around what John said? So if that whole freshman boys basketball, or the whole 9th grade boys basketball last year had 14 kids on it, 14 boys on it, right? And they all moved to JV, but there's only 5 that play.
It's a couple of things. We can track that, but we won't know until basketball season because like 5 of them might decide not to play anyway.
Yeah, I know.
You know what I mean? Like, you never have a whole freshman team go to the next level.
Right,
I've never
right.
seen that happen in all the years I coached.
I didn't-
I
I
mean,
didn't know if there was a-
typically you end up with about 5 kids per class.
Okay.
Like last year, our girls varsity team, basketball varsity program, for instance, with the freshmen, there was 14 student athletes total.
So, but I guess that's maybe what would be good to know, is what, because if the total for the boys was 60, which I'm sure it's not, then getting rid of a team doesn't make sense.
Right,
If
last
it's 14
last
or
year there was
20, it's
20
different.
boys total in the varsity program.
So like, I mean,
That's in JV.
baseball's not going to be an issue. There's not enough numbers to barely run the high school team in by itself. So like, to me, that's an easy one. The girls freshman team barely rostered. The issue really is going to be the boys 9th grade team because, I mean, Landon had a ton of kids that they were coaching. So I'm assuming they could easily roster a 9th grade team. And so, to me, that would be the one I'd want to discuss. Because those kids are never going to play, those kids are never playing JV basketball.
And I would never, I always want to just give the board the most, the best and more clear information I can. But we could also choose not to take action on this until the spring, and
I
then
think we can.
use it as a year to also track more data. I mean,
I
that's,
think we should, I think we would be ready to do it by next week.
okay.
That's right, I mean,
I think this is something we have to move forward on and
Yep.
just kind of, and keep, because kicking the can down the road. And I understand about the numbers, but I agree with Paul. We don't know the numbers until the season starts. That's the unfortunate truth of it, so. And like I said, there's nobody on this board that wants to take away opportunities from kids. We want to make sure they have opportunities.
Yep.
But John, I agree with what you're saying with the freshmen playing JVs and things like that.
And if they're sitting the bench, they're not getting an opportunity.
Right,
Is
I think 2 of the 3 are going to be easy, and then we just finalize what we're doing with
Yep.
the boys' basketball and move on.
So we'll bring that on the agenda next time, Paul?
Yes.
Is there a requirement that if we have a boys freshman team, that we have to have a girls freshman team? For title, whatever.
I'm gonna kick that one to John.
You have to try to keep them equal as best you can. But if
So-
you don't have the, interest in the girls' team, then, you
That's a different
shouldn't
story.
have it. But you don't have to have it. But if you should provide the same opportunities and the same interests for both the girls and the boys' teams.
All right, so,
Yep,
Board
I'll write a motion for the next board meeting.
Okay.
Almost like I'll write a motion almost like with 3 parts to consider each of the 3.
so Lori, you withdraw your motion? Okay. Okay. Moving right along, we have number 2, motion to approve the second reading of the following board policies. Just to avoid confusion, there will be 2 chunks of board policies tonight. This group is in their second reading, which we will have to vote on. There is another group under new business that is just the first reading that there won't be any need to vote on, just for board member clarification. Do we have a motion to approve the second reading of the board policies as listed under unfinished business, number 2?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Dr. O'Shea?
Yes.
Dr. Favola?
Yes.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Mrs. Bennett?
Yes.
Mrs. Eckert?
Yes.
Mr. Farr?
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold?
Yes. New business, item number 1, update on right to know requests. They are there for your information on page 63 of your booklet, as well as item 2, the TASD Visa account is available on pages 64 to 66. Any discussion on these items? Hearing none. Item 3 will be the first reading of the following board policies. Any discussion? Okay. Item 4, motion to approve the dual enrollment agreements with the following colleges and universities: Keystone College, Lackawanna College, and University of Scranton.
Motion to approve?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Dr. Favola?
Yes.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Mrs. Bennett?
Yes.
Mrs. Eckert?
Yes.
Dr. O'Shea?
Yes.
Mr. Farr?
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold?
Yes. Item 5, motion to approve agreement contract with the Luzerne Intermediate Unit for the 24-25 school year as follows: contract for therapeutic services with the partial hospitalization program, and the affiliation agreement for student teaching. As a annual clarification, this is a contract for these partial hospitalization programs for mental health that are services we do not offer in our district. We have never offered in our district, and yet we are required to find that placement if that is what a student needs.
Correct.
So,
Motion to approve?
Second.
any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Mrs. Bennett?
Yes.
Mrs. Eckert?
Yes.
Dr. O'Shea?
Yes.
Dr. Favola?
Yes.
Mr. Farr?
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold?
Yes. Item 6, motion to approve a memorandum of understanding service agreement for the 24-25 academic year with Hands of Wyoming County to work as a home-to-school liaison truancy prevention program.
Motion to approve.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Bennett?
Yes.
Mrs. Eckert?
Yes.
Dr. O'Shea?
Yes.
Dr. Favola?
Yes.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Mr. Farr?
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold?
Yes. Item number 7, motion to approve an overnight out-of-state field trip for the 8th and 9th grade jazz band to Cleveland, Ohio. Proposed dates of the trip are May 29th to June 1st, 2025.
They are performing at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Eckert?
Yes.
Dr. O'Shea?
Yes.
Dr. Favola?
Yes.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Mrs. Bennett?
Yes.
Mr. Farr?
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold?
Yes. I am looking for any objection to lumping items 8, 9, and 10 together as
I
construction
would just like
projects.
to, if I can, about 8. I guess I'm going to say I'm out over my skis a little bit on 8 because this was an emergency repair. I'm asking you to approve that change order, and I hope you do because it's done. When they dug the hole, when we were doing the project for the bus drainage, the bus port drainage, they found a more significant issue. And John Chapulski, please correct me if I'm wrong. And there was a hole open in the parking lot that we weren't going to close it and get ready for school before we considered it. So I took the liberty to say, yeah, like we're going to do this. We're going to be ready to open school. So if you approve 8, you are also approving the payment of 8 in number 9 because it's done. So just to be fully transparent with the board. John, did I say anything wrong with that?
If you don't approve it, it'll come out of the superintendent's salary.
Okay.
I vote no.
So you're looking for a motion, Madam President?
Yep, for 8, 9, and 10.
Motion to approve 8, 9, and 10 as written and described by our superintendent.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Dr. O'Shea?
Yes.
Dr. Cavola?
Yes.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Mrs. Bennett?
Yes.
Mrs. Eckert?
Yes.
Mr. Farr?
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold?
Yes. Item 11, motion to approve a donation from Alltech in the form of tools. The value of the tool donation will range from $250 to $500. These tools will be used in our red tile district.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? Thank you for their generosity. Roll call, please.
Dr. O'Shea?
Yes.
Dr. Cavola?
Yes.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Mrs. Bennett?
Yes.
Mrs. Eckert?
Yes.
Mr. Farr?
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold?
Yes. Item 12, motion to approve Conrad Siegel Actuaries for the 24 ACA employer reporting.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Dr. O'Shea?
Yes.
Dr. Cavola?
Yes.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Mrs. Bennett?
Yes.
Mrs. Eckert?
Yes.
Mr. Farr?
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold?
Yes. Item 13, motion to approve the purchase of grades 3 to 8 Amplify Science textbooks. Cost will be $194,094.88. Funding will be from the 23-24 textbook general fund and ARP ESSER funds.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion?
Are these the ones we talked about like a couple of meetings ago? It was to update like the science curriculum. That's what these,
Yes,
right?
that's exactly
Okay.
what this. Now
I was trying to remember that.
Yep.
Yep.
This did go out to RFP, and then we got bids submitted, and then we had a committee of teachers that went through the materials and had a discussion and picked what they thought was the most appropriate. And how much of this is coming from ARP? Significant, right?
Significant.
Almost all of it is coming out of our ESSER funding.
And it meets the new guidelines, the new
Yes.
state guidelines.
Correct.
Great.
How long of a contract is this? How long of a contract?
5 year.
This is a 5-year contract for this, like a one-time cost for the 5 years.
Okay, great. And it's, they're whatever is compatible with Canvas, not Canvas, Fusion? Like whatever those textbook
Yes.
stuff is Fusion compatible? Okay, good. Thank you.
Thank you.
And the teachers approved all the resources that they wanted,
Correct.
that were offered. Okay. Great. Any other discussion?
Got a motion, right? Yep.
Okay. Can we get a roll call, please?
Dr. Cavola?
Yes.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Mrs. Bennett?
Yes.
Mrs. Eckert?
Yes.
Dr. O'Shea?
Yes.
Mr. Farr?
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold?
Yes. All right, we'll open the floor to any additional public comments. Superintendent Doherty, could you do us a favor and reach out to Mr. Widener next week? Because I know you won't be in tomorrow, just to make sure he's okay.
Oh, Mr. Widener had a medical appointment today.
Okay.
He
All
did
right.
stop in yesterday to speak to myself and Mrs. Lawson, bring us up to speed, and let us know he needed a book set aside for him so he can review it, and he will be at the next meeting.
Okay, excellent.
I did want to thank the administration and most specifically John Chapolsky for all the work going on. Like I just haven't, I've been in Tunkhannock a long time, and so outside of building schools, I mean, I've seen more work this summer, and it doesn't seem like there's any issues that I've heard about. And so I'm sure there are issues, but the fact we don't hear about them tells me you got things under control. So thank you very much.
I would like to thank you so much for saying that. John had a very strong summer. I will take all the credit you're willing to give me, but John had an exceptionally strong summer. But
He does a good job.
I would also like to publicly thank Representative Tina Pickett. We were struggling a little bit with UGI, and we didn't struggle with UGI after we got Representative Pickett involved. So that's worth mentioning. So I'd like to send a special thank you to her for helping us out and keeping us on our timeline.
I just had one question. So I know that there was a rainstorm last year or a year before at some point where the lobby got flooded. Did the new tiles take care of whatever had caused that in the past?
The storm drain system that's under this building is aged, so when we started to dig, we discovered
So this is an ongoing problem with this building. So it's not just the storm drain, it's the sewer system that's underneath all of this concrete and tile in here. We're going to have a problem on our hands at some point down the road that could end up being sooner than we are hoping, I would think. The district has put many things in place to try and avoid some of the issues that we're having with some of the flushing of items that weren't helping the situation, where you have pipes that were partially collapsed. The last chance garbage can, I mean, that was a great idea. But this is going to be a problem that catches up with us at some point, because that type of infrastructure, even out, in your communities, is not expected to last as long as we've put this one to work. So, I'm sure we'll be addressing, we'll be hearing about this,
It's funny because the emergency repair that you authorized tonight, like, we were planning on running, like, drains into what the existing drain was, and as we dug down, it was gone. It was disintegrated. It didn't exist anymore. Like, so it became, what do we do? And that's what we found, and we found that in a couple places. When we fixed the pool drain this year, it was just gone. Like, it's...
Was it repaired prior to the rainstorm we got, the Friday of
Last week.
Triton Hose Carnival? Good. That was a lot of rain.
Yeah. I mean, it's rained hard recently, and we've been pretty good. In fact, I think we've been real good. I love the outside now. That's, it's grass out front. It looks
I was
spectacular.
just about to say, Matt, your grass out there looks fantastic. Excellent work. Worth
But-
every penny we pay you for it.
But even after the hard
Don't
rain
tell
on
me
the
you don't
tennis
live in
courts,
grass.
John, right? It's amazing with the tennis courts. The rain doesn't, the water doesn't sit. Amazing.
Great. Well, thank you very much. Excellent work
Thanks.
to summarize.
Thank you.
Do we have a motion to adjourn?